a beautiful thing. It grows to the quiver of a fife that sings. I can take it with the wave of my hand and place it upon my music stand. Such a beautiful thing. Such a beautiful thing.
Good morning, everyone.
World is a marvelous show.
Okay, so thanks everyone for showing up today, for coming out, for celebrating miracles with us. Today I want to talk about awakening from the dream of death. We are all holy children of God, as we know. And the Course in Miracles teaches that, we've come to this world as really children in the sense of what our former state of mind had been. And we make up a lot of different things in this world that make it real, including our special relationships and money and power and sex and drugs and even status and privilege and nobility. But if we don't perceive these things properly, they're really just another form of a parody of the life that we share in our true state. So as I was guided to give this talk, I thought to myself, well, how do I understand? What do I think of death? And I kind of tried to use my Course in Miracles teaching and thinking about it. And this is what I have come up with. It's not when you lay your body aside, as most folks, even Course in Miracle folks, would think. And how do we know this, though? Like, where's my justification for this? Well, one of the lessons that Course has us teach or has us repeat time and time again, I believe around July, is the refrain, I am not a body. I am free just as God created me. So we know then that death in and of itself is not when the body stops functioning in the role that we have given it. So what is death then? So this is what I think. I think death is any time that we choose the ego, which may be more often than we like to admit. So if we pay attention to our own internal global positioning system, which some of us might call our feelings, then we know what teacher we have chosen. So in a non-judgmental way, if we can observe our own state of mind, our own state of being, anytime we're in fear, anxiety, guilt, shame, sadness, frustration, that's a signal. That's a signal from God that we are experiencing kind of like a death. Now, some might be more intense than others. Some might have a longer duration than others. Some might be momentary. But nonetheless, it is a form of death. Now, to me, this is kind of, in a way, a little hopeful. Because when you think about the world view of death, or at least what the ego has conditioned into our minds, especially if we think about the COVID era where, if you turn on that electronic media, it worships death, fear of death, 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 death. I'm so sick of it. I want to throw my TV out the window. That's all it talks about on some of those stations. And it's time that we stop. We stop worshiping death. Even the word, the definition, how do they define death? Terminal illness. Well, guess what, folks? There's nothing terminal about the holy child of God. We are not ending any time. There is no such thing. This is what the Course in Miracles says. You can temporize, and you are capable of enormous procrastination, but you cannot depart entirely from your Creator, who limits on your ability to miscreate. So any time that we're investing in the ego and we're suffering, and sometimes that suffering sucks and it lasts a long time, just know, have the faith and believe that your Creator, who you share everything with, is there. God is with you always. And that suffering will end. Your life will not end, but your suffering will. I was, as I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking about being raised. I was raised as a Catholic, as some of you know. And I was thinking about, what were some of the beliefs that I was raised with, being a Catholic. So basically, this is my understanding. Now, I'm not a Catholic theologian, so I just want to say that this is just my kind of the message that I got. So if you're raised Catholic, you were baptized and then confirmed. And basically, if you went to church and maybe went to confession every once in a while and lived a good life, that you were going to go to heaven. It was pretty good. It was a pretty good chance that St. Peter was going to meet you at the pearly gates and say, okay, you pass, you get in. Okay. And there was even this belief that, that if you had received the last rites and were kind of repentant at the end, even if you lived a life where you caused all kinds of harm and death and destruction, you would get into heaven too. Now, of course, as a Course in Miracles students, we believe heaven is just a decision away, and we believe in the holy instant, and we know that we can have a heavenly state of mind even in the appearance of this world. But in terms of the permanent state of mind of being in heaven, I believe the Course is telling us that it's a process. That's why it's called the atonement. It's a process of forgiveness. It's a process of miracles where we gradually undo the ego. And that makes a lot more sense to me than kind of like the instant salvation, which I grew up with. So what are some examples of this then? So they happen in our relationships, right? Wherever they show up. So as some of you know, I work as a teacher in a school. It's a very particular type of school that I work with students who have been identified with by the educational system as having severe emotional disabilities or impairments, emotional and learning impairments that prevent them from being able to get an education. So they basically get a lot of therapeutic support. So recently I've been working with a student, and this student has been a real challenge to teach. And it's been one of those situations where infinite patience results in immediate effects. So this student happens to know a lot of information about many subjects, and also has a tendency sometimes to, when I teach the lesson or provide the lesson, I often provide, we have questions they have to answer or work they have to do related to the lesson. So sometimes the student puts down just answers that they know, or Google's answers and puts them down. And, it's quite apparent that this is kind of happening. So, I was trying to think to myself, again, being a Course in Miracles student is like, well, the student's coming to class, the student's showing up, I started talking about it with one of my colleagues. And, you know, what we got was when I would talk to the student about it, a lot of times there was a lot of defiance and defensiveness about, well, you know, like, I know the answer, I'm smart, you know, this is my answer, right? And so I was, you know, trying to figure out, okay, well, the truth of the matter, what was happening is they weren't using the text or the video that we used in class and applying it to the question. They were just responding to what they knew. So, you know, what I said to them was, eventually I figured it out. Look, I know you're smart, right? I know you know a lot of information about this topic. I said, but you have to go and look at the question and see if this, you know, applies with the answer you're providing is actually applying to the work that we're doing in class. And we did that together. And he started to see that, oh, okay, you know, this is, you know, we're studying subject A. Oh, this is what the text says. Oh, this is what the video says. And, you know, then we would work on the writing piece. And so, you know, what I learned from that is, like, from kind of like the egoic point of view, oh, this kid's cheating, you know, this kid's defiant, this kid's resistant, blah, blah, all these kinds of things. Yeah. Am I ever defiant? Do I ever not listen to the Holy Spirit? You know, I mean, it's just one and the same, you know, we're doing the same thing. So the Holy Spirit's patient with us, even when we're in our moments of death, right? Even when we are refusing the Spirit. But as the Course in Miracles says, there is no separation. So he and I are learning these lessons together. Oh, you know, he wants to be acknowledged for his intelligence. And as anyone that's ever worked with anybody, you know, everybody has intelligence. Everybody has talents. And it's really up to the miracle worker in relationships to acknowledge that and bring that out in one another. We don't do this separately, folks. We do not heal. We do not awaken separately. We awaken together. We awaken when we embrace the divinity in the other. In this case, the divinity is this kid's talents. This kid wants to learn. This kid wants to be successful, and that's what he's trying to do. And so my job as a teacher, just like the Holy Spirit's job, is to guide them. Oh, I'm upset. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means I made a wrong choice. Holy Spirit, help me, right? Guide me. Course in Miracles says, there is no time and no place where God is absent. Even if there are times when we may be experiencing dreams of death. Now, I've been going through personally these COVID times, and perhaps like many of you, I've been going through a lot of changes in my life. One of my more recent changes is that I've basically stopped eating sugar and most kind of like processed carbohydrates. And so I've lost about 20 pounds. And what I found in this process that I've been going through is that the ego lurks everywhere, okay? You know, the Course in Miracles says, you know, that we can pursue idols or we can pursue God. And he talks about in the Course in Miracles where there are gaps, right? So he says the gap between us and God is idols. So, you know, for me, for many years, one of my struggles has been with my relationship with food. in a way, it's a special relationship. It's where I've gone for comfort. It's where I've gone for to soothe, uncomfortable feelings and so on and so forth. Well, what's interesting, what happens is when you put down one idol, the ego puts up some other idols as well. And so for me, there was this experience of, I had a lot more energy recently it's interesting during these times when this quarantine kind of time existence that we're living in, that you have more time. I have more time to myself. And so, that has been beneficial in certain ways. I don't go into work. I don't see people as much. Probably there's a different kind of stress that's experienced, but I certainly, in a certain way, don't spend as much time traveling and so on and so forth. So there is more time. And so I've had time to kind of work on this, letting go of the way I've treated food as an idol and made progress on it. But what has happened in the interim, what then happened is other things came up. And so I started thinking about, I started having this experience with money. So, money became like an idol for me. And what happened was, couple things happened. Some bills, long-term bills, I got paid off. For most of my working life, I've lived paycheck to paycheck. But the last 3 or 4 years, I've had some extra money left over. And now during this past year or so during COVID times, I don't travel for softball and I don't see friends out as much. So I've, kind of saved a lot of money. And so what I noticed is like this money thing took me over in a way, and I became preoccupied with money. And I thought, hey, I want to buy property. And I was watching, financial shows a lot and going on and da-da-da. But in part because Reverend Tony and I had a personal discussion about certain things, and kind of my own, pay attention to my own global positioning system, which is my feelings, I realized that I had replaced one idol with another. And remember what the Course in Miracles says, seek and do not find, right? So it's not, as we know, it's not that any of these things that we pursue is wrong, but it's the state of mind, the belief system from which we are pursuing it, that causes us problems. So if I'm pursuing something to the point where it's becoming like my obsession, and it's becoming my God, and it's becoming my safety and my security, then I am off target. And so I think, that it's very helpful for all of us to understand that, we came here because we had made a wrong decision, but we can right the decision. Course in Miracles says this: freedom is creation because it is love. Whom you seek to imprison, you do not love. Therefore, when you seek to imprison anyone, including yourself, you do not love him, and you cannot identify with him. And so I have to say that what is most important as a Course in Miracles student is to recognize our right to choose. It's to recognize our freedom in whatever circumstance we may be, and know that God goes with us wherever we may be. And sometimes that means challenging the orthodoxy of your TV, the orthodoxy of government leaders, the orthodoxy of how we deal with defiant people and disruptive people. We have to see ourselves in them, and we have to remember that freedom is very, very important. If we want to awaken from the dream of death and assume our place in heaven, then we must be free to choose for ourselves forgiveness and the miracle. And we must choose regardless of what the egoic world is telling us how to choose. And I'll leave you with that today. That's my talk. Thank you.
A flower is a beautiful thing. It grows to the quiver of a fife that sings. I can take it with the wave of my hand and place it upon my music stand. Such a beautiful thing. Such a beautiful thing.